So, what do you do if it feels like you just have zero libido? Now, always when I'm working with couples, there's a higher desire person, a lower desire person. And I'm always trying to help the lower desire person connect to desire. And this kind of involves two different stages or two different angles. One is, what are the obstacles in the way of desire? What are the kinds of things that are throwing up roadblocks to interest in sex? And this can be health concerns, mental health stuff, exhaustion, relationship issues, trauma, shame. I mean, all kinds of things can get in the way and block your capacity for desire, right? Shut that off. So that's one angle, is looking at these obstacles and making sure we're addressing all of them, identifying them and addressing them. The other angle is then, how do we unlock the desire you could have? How do we tap into the desire potential? So these are like, what are the door openers to desire? And one of the things I talk about all the time is that somebody that's feeling little to no libido probably has the kind of desire that I call reactive. So they're not thinking about sex, they're not already aroused, they're not in the mood. But if they got what they needed, they could potentially end up in the mood. They could become aroused. And once aroused, have an interest in sex, especially if these obstacles are out of the way. Now, what I talk about is that this reactive kind of desire, if you have cleared all the obstacles, shows up somewhere between 5% of the time and 95% of the time, right? It's not 100%, but it's also not zero. At least so far in my experience, I haven't met somebody with zero, but it is theoretically possible, I suppose. But what if you or your partner are on the very low end of the spectrum? This is what this woman was talking about in my call this week, is that they're doing things, and so far it's like, well, this is nice, this is fine, but it's not generating any arousal or interest in sex, at least so far. So my advice to her and my advice to you would be a couple of things. Like, I really want to help you exhaust the possibilities before we would conclude that you have zero reactive desire, or like 1 or 2%, right? There's still stuff to explore. Like, we don't know yet what's under the surface. So for somebody going through the program and doing the exercises and taking all the pressure off and dealing with all the obstacles, and yet not finding touch or thoughts or whatever to stimulate some interest, my first suggestion is to do some of this alone. Let's move some of this into solo pleasure, into masturbation, into fantasy, into, you know, doing some of this without an audience, without somebody who's waiting for you, without somebody who's maybe judging or feeling disappointed or looking to see without having that pressure of another person in the room. What could be possible in terms of what would be pleasurable and potentially arousing? My other suggestion to her was to really dig into fantasy and eroticism. Is there any erotica that you would like to watch or read or think about, or romance novels or scenes in movies, whatever it is? Our brain is our biggest sex organ. Is there a way to be thinking about something or focusing on something that could add some fuel to the fire? Because often the physical touch isn't enough. The stimulation we need to get aroused, well, and to reach orgasm, is physical and mental. They add up. So let's make sure we're also exhausting the mental aspect of this. So to explore this alone and take the pressure off of a partner or a time limit or an audience, and let's just see if there's some road to arousal, even 5% of the time. And then if you discover that, then bring that in with your partner. Now, if you don't, again, I suppose there's this theoretical case where there's a zero out there, but even if it's just like 5% of the time, and most of the time you don't get aroused, it is still possible to share an engaging sex life, because you could still find a way to participate in your partner's sexual pleasure, some way that works for you, some way that you put this together with them and you share that experience. But this doesn't involve your sexual pleasure because you don't have interest in that. But maybe it could involve some sort of physical or emotional pleasure for you, a back rub, a hair brushing, a cuddle, whatever it is. It can still be a two-way street, even if you're on different streets. Mixing my metaphors here, but the worst case scenario is you're finding ways to share pleasure and connection that are sexual for one person and non-sexual for the other. And that could be an adjustment. I get it. Could be very different than it used to be. It could be different than you expected it to be. It could be different than you want it to be. So there may even be grieving or mourning around this change and this need to adjust. Any change is a loss, right? So there could be some grieving, but the final stage of grieving is an acceptance and a living into the new normal. And if you think about it, in my opinion, sex is about sharing pleasure and connection with each other. Not who's doing what, not to what end, not what you're doing with body parts. So there could still be a really meaningful way to connect with each other and share pleasure. Again, sexual for one person, non sexual for the other, that could feel really fulfilling and sustainable. And again, to me, that's the worst case scenario, and it's not that bad. It's an adjustment, but it's still meaningful and significant and connecting. So, takeaway is it's first of all, it's not uncommon to struggle with lack of libido. You are not broken. This is not your fault. It's happening in your body. Something may have changed or is going on in your body. That's true, but it's not your fault or you're failing. It's just your reality. There are still ways to share pleasure and connection. Make sure you are exhausting the mitigation of your obstacles, figuring out what those are and dealing with those, and you're working to access your desire. There's a lot, it's hard to say it's exhausted, right? When have we tried everything? But keep going, reach out for help if you need it.